Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Council of the 1st of June, and I want to acknowledge that the City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First up this evening is the adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held May 20th, 2015. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Salter. Any omissions, deletions, additions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item we have is a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor Beale. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have two pieces of correspondence this evening. We have a correspondence from Charna Macfie on the Ermineskin Wetlands. And where's the other one? What? The Monarchist League. So, first of all, I would, first recommendation is a mover and a second for the recommendation from the correspondence from Charna Macfie. Moved by Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor Beale. All those in favor? Thank you. The second piece of correspondence is that the correspondence from the Monarchist League of Canada be received May 21st, 2015, regarding a request for an event to be held on September 9th, 2015, to celebrate the Queen's reign. That this request be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Salter, Councillor Beale. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
I have a question on the first item of correspondence there. Does the City of Parksville have a plan with respect or a desire to preserve that land? And if they do we have a plan for the preservation of that wetland, or is there?
That's to be discussed by council at a later date, more than likely in camera. Okay. We have a few reports this evening. The first report, Mrs. Kelleher, would you please give us a background on the issue regarding the consideration of a development permit for 1155 Resort Drive?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 20th, the City received a development permit application from Taryn Williams of T.S. Williams Construction on behalf of the property owners Tainamara Resort. The application is for a development permit affecting limited common property, specifically the exterior decks adjacent to strata lots 1 to 15 of the building known as the Gabriola Building at Tainamara Resort. The applicant requests issuance of a development permit to facilitate a complete renovation of the exterior facade of the Gabriola Building, which is a tourist accommodation building, and includes resurfacing of 27 decks, replacing all of the exterior siding, railings, and exterior treatments, as shown on the attached plans with the report. And the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor Oates. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Oates, go
Just
ahead.
one item of clarification there. I believe the answer is no, but just for clarification, they're doing some repairs to the decks. The decks won't protrude any further out than what they actually do right now. It's just a replacement of the existing, is what I understand.
Yes. I happened to visit the site to have a look at it myself, and it does. Any further questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. The next item we have is on the 2014 Statement of Financial Information. This is a public report of financial information in accordance with the Province of BC's Financial Information Act and associated regulations. Mr. Butterworth, would you please give us background on the issue?
Thank you, Your Worship. The municipality is required to prepare a Statement of Financial Information by June 30th for the prior year, so for 2014 under the Financial Information Act. The SOFI, as we call it, is required to include specific financial information, including the audited financial statements, a management report, a debt schedule, council and employee remuneration, The employer remuneration would be for employees making more than $75,000 and the rest of the employees in total. And a listing of payments to suppliers over $25,000 and also a cumulative total of all suppliers under $25,000. And the recommendation is as per the report.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Greir. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Greir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know this is not a budget meeting, but I just want to bring to the attention a couple of figures that I think that in November or whenever we start the next budget meeting that we should look at. One is, of course, wages are up 159,000. Pardon? Oh, sorry, 64, which is almost 3%. And also consulting and contracting out fees of $4,536,000, and that's up over last year, 175,000. I think we're going to have to take a look at this for sure in November when we start to do the next budget meeting, but I just think we should look at those, and I would just bring that to your attention for further discussion at some other time. Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is from the Director of Administrative Services regarding the permissive taxation exemption policy. Mrs. Comas, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, Your Worship. This report is prepared in response to Council's request for a review of the permissive tax exemption policy. The report provides background information on the creation and adoption of the current policy. The goal of the policy is to gradually reduce the amount of allocation to permissive tax exemptions to 1.67% of property tax revenues over a period of 10 years. For 2015, the allocation of property tax revenue for permissive tax exemptions is 1.82%, or $198,712. If Council wishes to change the policy in any way, a resolution arising from receipt of the report is required. The recommendation is as per the Council agenda.
Thank you. To get the discussion going, do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Greir and Councillor Powell. Questions, concerns? Councillor Greir.
I just think that we should go with option one, stay the status quo that the Council the last term came up with. I don't think we should be making any changes. I think we melted a little bit in the spring and we lost a bit of money, $1,500 to be exact, or in around there, when we decided to pay for the curling club, I believe. But the tax on the curling club and those other properties are so little that I think we should just stay the status quo. Thanks.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I disagree with Councillor Greir, not surprisingly. The curling club have exceptional circumstances about what they're responsible for as far as their maintenance and upkeep of that building. And I think that $1,500, you say, is a little amount to them, and I'm telling you then if that's the case, it must be the same for us. Anyways, I would support option two, and I think that what they do for the community and how much they pay to maintain that building and to keep it going is worth speaking about, because it's a lot of money. And you guys go out every year to make sure that you meet that lease agreement with the RDN. It's on public land, and I think that that would be the right thing to do.
Any further comments? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Directed through you to our director, our chief. I'm not sure actually who would be the person to ask, but the question would be, can we do this on property by property basis, or would we be looking at a whole new policy, tax exemption policy?
If I may, Your Worship, it could be either. It really depends on Council's direction. I guess to be as fair and consistent as possible, it should be on a policy basis as opposed on a one-on-one. But again, that's really up to Council's direction.
Yes, Councillor Patterson.
So much like Councillor Powell, I'm support option 2, but I'm wondering that if we were to change this wouldn't be in effect for 2006, or would it be for 2016? Sorry, it wouldn't be anything for at this point in time, and it would allow our property owners and everything to have enough time to reflect that.
Yeah, we have just gone out to advertise for the permissive tax exemptions for 2016. So applications for 2016 must be in by June 30th. But as the CAO said, this is completely discretional by council. So if the curling club makes an application for 100% permissive tax exemption and council chooses to give that to them, that's totally within your frame of reference to do that.
Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also like to support doing something particular for the curling club in recognition of their particular circumstances and the fact that they are doing this on public land in a public building. I would like to see us amend the permissive tax exemption to allow for the curling club to be included, and I would like to make that motion.
Seconded by Councillor Powell. Wait a minute. I didn't call for a mover and a seconder, or yes, I did. We have a motion on the floor, don't we? Okay. No, we don't. You moved it.
We have a motion to receive the report, and then once you vote on that, you can introduce a motion arising. Okay. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, are you moving a motion to amend the recreational capacity to 100%? Just for...
Yeah. And then we have to go further.
All right, so let's call the vote on receiving the report. All those in favor? Thank you. That's passed unanimously. Now, Councillor Beale, would you like to make that motion?
I would like to move that we amend the permissive tax exemption policy to include the curling club as being eligible for that. If that's
effective immediately?
100%.
Effective immediately?
Well, my understanding is that it would be for the coming year. We've already done something for them for this year.
Okay. The seconder is Councillor Powell. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Oates.
I think making policy that's specific to one organization is dangerous. I think that if we're going to be doing a policy, it should be a blanket policy. That's why it's called a policy. And to do one specifically for the curling club, while I support them having an exemption, my support manifested itself this year when we did the vote to alter from our process and give them, in fact, a 100% exemption. That ability exists for council next year as well. We can always deal with these organizations one by one as they come up. So if we're going to change the policy, I don't have any appetite for changing it for a single organization. But if we want to talk about changing it for all similar organizations, that's a different discussion. But I will be voting against this.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so through you to the CAO, what I'm looking for, and I think that's what Councillor Beale was looking for, was some sort of consistency instead of having to come back every year for the 100% permissive tax exemption. And so is there a way, or is there something we can do in the wording, or will they just have to come back every year?
The way the policy is structured right now, actually for all properties, is you have to apply every year. Okay. Now, as far as the policy is concerned, council has stated for public park, recreation, athletic, and youth, there is a 50% exemption, which is what the curling club falls under right now by policy. So if you wanted to change that, so they would get 100% exemption. You would have to make a special resolution to allow them 100% exemption. Or, as Councillor Oates was saying, change the public park recreation, athletic, and youth category so that everybody in that category gets 100% exemption. Off the top of my head, that would also include the bowling, lawn bowling club, and I believe the rod and gun, or the shooting range.
Councillor Greir, Councillor Powell, and Councillor
I would agree the step process that we should be going through. I agree with Councillor Oates. I think we should talk about the policy. If you don't like the policy, then you can change the policy, which will then allow us to do whatever you want to give these organizations a grant or not. But I still stand firm on the fact that I think the council last year and the advisory board did a lot of work on this, and when we look at the long-term effect, long-term financial responsibility, I think it means something at the end of the day. It's not just a one-year thing. So anyways, I think we shouldn't be doing any motion on just the curling club at this time. We should either accept the policy or make them change the policy, one or the other.
Councillor Powell and Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so here's why I think the curling club is different than just the sports club. There's no other sports organization that is paying for the maintenance and upkeep of an extremely old building that's on public property in a public building. And so I think I support the criteria and I support the new policy that we created last year or the year before. Having said that, I think if that's the case, we need to make another criteria or something, because I don't think it's fair for us to try and get permissive tax from a sports organization that is actually putting so much money into running the sports organization. I don't believe there's any other organization that is doing that. And so somehow we need to figure out how to manage this, because it is a different category.
Beale and then Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I wish to add or clarify is that, because I do agree with Councillor Powell, is that not only is this a public building, but this is in fact an RDN building, and in fact the RDN would qualify for 100% permissive tax. So the curling club in effect is providing a huge service and in fact reducing costs overall for us and for the citizens by with the maintenance that it has taken on in the lease.
Just let me step in here for a moment, Councillor, if you may. In the case of the RDN have a lease with the curling club. It's the RDN that's requiring them in the lease to pay the taxes. The other bigger picture that Councillor Oates has referred to and Councillor Greir is that the intent of this policy that exists now was to cut back on the amount of permissive taxation, which was appearing to increase year after year. It's almost equivalent now to a 2% tax increase. So I'll just leave that out there for you to consider. Councillor Oates.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions and then a comment. Who owns the property upon which the lawn bowling club resides?
The city does.
Who owns the property upon which the gun range is?
Somebody can tell me that. Yes.
Okay, so comparing apples to apples, the lawn bowling then is similar to the curling club. Okay. Do we do any maintenance at the lawn bowling greens?
That's totally
so that's similar to the
they
curling
do it all,
club.
Yep.
Do we do any maintenance at the firing range?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So that's similar then to the curling club. I'm not against a tax exemption for the curling club. I believe they provide good value to the community. I'm against carving out people and making policies for single groups. I'm with Councillor Greir. Write it in your calendars. I'm with Councillor Greir that maybe we should stay to status quo as where we are now and deal with it one-on-one as they come before us. And I appreciate the mayor giving the historical background that the purpose of this policy was to reduce the amount of taxes. So for us to be altering the policies, I think it'd be going against the spirit of the original intent of the policy. There's a mechanism for us to do what we all want to do for the curling club, and we did it just a couple of months ago, so we can certainly do it again next year.
I'm going to let the CAO go, and then I'll come back to you. CAO.
If I may, Your Worship, with regards to the methodology used to exempt the curling club this year, that actually costs the city money to do that. When a permissive exemption is given, it not only exempts the property from municipal taxes, it exempts the property from all taxes. When there is in this case, the 50% exemption, they were still taxable on the other 50%. So when we granted them money to pay the 50%, we not only granted them money to pay ourselves, but we also granted them money to pay the other government agencies. So to save us money, if you want to give them an exemption, give them the whole exemption, because then it exempts them from everything.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you. I was actually just wanting to remind Council of what Mr. Manson just said, because it will cost us extra money to have to do that next year on a one-off.
Councillor Salter.
So I also support the exemption for the curling club, but I also see the dilemma that we are in here. And I'm wondering if it would be possible through you to CAO, could we come up with a policy that doesn't speak just to the curling club, but speaks to any club that falls under that umbrella? So that, because it's kind of a what we've got is a bit of a cookie cutter policy right now, and they don't fit into that. So they're kind of paying the price for us kind of putting, driving them through that policy. If we could create a policy that does speak to that, and then other clubs may also fall under it, and that would also save us those dollars that we did do this year. We did spend money this year on trying to assist them with the permission. Is that a possibility?
CEO, you want to respond to that?
Well, anything is a possibility. It's establishing what the criteria to use. You could, for instance, direct staff to amend the policy to create a separate category for the curling club under whatever grounds or criteria you want, and bring it back for council's consideration. The problem with all of these things, when you create categories, there's always going to be hiccups or whatever when you're trying to put properties or whatever into a category, which is what we did this time. The category was public park, recreation, athletic, and youth. So that was the category. It was council's decision that those categories of properties would get a 50% exemption. So now if we want to amend this to create another category that will just hold the curling club, then what are the specific things that change it from the others? Or what part of this one do we have to take out to make the curling club separate?
Councillor Oates, I believe you had your hand up first, and then Councillor Greir, and then Councillor Beal.
I really appreciate the information there, Mr. Manson, with respect to saving us money by going to the full exemption. The other two organizations, the Lawn Bowling and the Rod and Gun Club, similar stories for them would be saving money by giving them 100% as opposed to the 50, and then granting it after the fact if they came forward?
It would be exactly the same, and actually there's one other that falls under this, the cadets. They would be under this category as well, so there's actually 4 properties.
Thank you, Your Worship. I personally think we should stay with the policy for this year and deal when they come up one at a time, because I still think we should be looking at the long-term fiscal responsibility. We are spending 2.12% on taxes, and that's higher than any other community according to our research that we did with the advisory board, and the past council passed it unanimously for this policy, and everybody believed it was a good policy until the curling club came along. The curling club's a private club. Not everybody can afford to be a curler. It's no different than the Qualicum Golf Course. It's owned by the city of Qualicum. However, the members are expected to pay all expenses and also pay the city as well a rental fee, and I'm not quite sure what their fee is per year. But they do have to pay, plus all the upkeep. So, and that's a private club, and that's why not everybody can afford to join that particular club, and it's not much different than the curling club.
Okay, we're winding down here. We're going to have to come to a vote. I just wanted to make a comment about the lawn bowling club. CAO, correct me if I'm wrong, but at present the lawn bowling club has a lease with the city, and in that lease they have a lease with the city, and in that lease they're not required to pay permissive taxation.
They're not required to pay taxes.
Okay, same thing. We're playing with words, but they don't pay any taxes.
That's correct.
And I've never heard anybody on council want to change that in my time on council. That's always been the case, has it not?
The lease, the way it's being structured, because the issue of permissive taxation was never an issue, the lease was silent with regards to taxes. Okay. Now that permissive exemption is an issue, when the lease comes up, I believe in 2018, the provision for taxes will be included, at which point, under this policy, they would be responsible for paying the taxes, if council so wished.
Okay. So let's call the vote on Councillor Beal's motion, which Councillor Powell seconded. And to be specific, that motion read again. Who wrote it down? Because
that council amend the permissive tax exemption policy to include a 100% exemption for the curling club.
Okay, so remember, this would be strictly for the curling club, and the existing policy would be amended. It includes everybody else but the curling club with regards to the sports youth, and that's sort of whatever that wording you've given us a number of times this evening. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. In deference to your age, I'm going to allow you one more question or one more comment.
I don't think that's a fair way to do it, and I don't think that would be a proper way to do it. I don't think you can just make one motion out of the policy. I think you got to do something with the entire policy. You just can't pick and choose what you want out of it.
Use your microphone. Okay. All right. Because we're going to be at this for a long, long time.
Thank you. I can appreciate the will and would support the will to do something about the policy. I am concerned that if organizations need to submit an application by is at the end of June, that time is a factor here, and I'm concerned about how much staff time would be involved in terms of addressing the policy. So that's one of the reasons that I would like to see this one-off, if you like, and to give us a little more time to look at how that might be changed.
Remember, if this motion is defeated, somebody can always make another motion. Yes, Mrs. Coleman.
Just to allay some concern, the advertisements for the permissive tax exemption have already gone out. So the applications will come in by the end of June, and then in September, council will be reviewing those. All of those applications go forward to council. It's not an automatic, even with the policy, that people receive a certain exemption. So council will have an opportunity when they review the applications to make any changes to those that they see fit.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, which is to provide an exemption at this point in time strictly for the curling club. All those in favor? Opposed? So that motion is defeated. Do I hear other...
I would like to make a motion.
Yes, I thought you would.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So here's what I think we need to do is leave the policy as it is because it's already gone out. Fred, you can help me? I see you put your hand up. Can you help me?
If I may, Your Worship, Council has the authority to provide permissive exemptions. It's done by bylaw. The bylaw has to be passed by October 31st of this year for next year. The policy, as it sits right now, is a ways and means to bring those permissive exemptions forward, to find out who in the community would want one, and then to give the community some direction as to what they can expect to happen. Regardless of what the policy is, it's only a policy. Council made the policy, you can change it. Come September or October, when these applications or the applicants are brought before you, even though the policy says that the public park, recreation, athletic, youth, under which curling clubs or the curling club falls, is a 50% exemption, you can choose at that time to give them a 100% exemption. So really you don't have to do anything right now. You can think about it in between now and when everything comes forward for the actual bylaw and pick and choose what percentages you want. Now, that doesn't exactly help the community out there because it is a little bit of hit and miss, but you still have the option to do that if you so wish.
Councillor Powell.
I understand that we have that time to do that, but I'm wondering if now wouldn't be the time to, for council to look at the policy or have staff look at the policy to see if there is another category, or should we wait until October? October to me seems like it's too late.
Dale.
Well, the policy can be changed anytime you want. It's how it's applied. The only deadline that we have is October 31st. Council has to pass a bylaw at that time which exempts the properties from whatever taxes you wish. So that's where we're at. If Council wanted to put together some sort of committee in conjunction with staff to review the criteria again, we can certainly do that. We need, I think, some direction from Council as to the things that make the curling club special, which could be included in this new category to see whether it would fit, plus what other groups or organizations may be captured under that as well.
And I would suggest if Council is in the mood for that this evening, I would ask also for the financial implications. Councillor Salter.
And so I also support a motion to amend, either amend that policy or change that policy to include the curling club. And I would also like to get started on it now rather than waiting until October, because if October 31st is the end date, and we need to read this policy, debate it, and so on, then I would want to see us getting started on it now and being prepared at that time rather than doing it at that time.
Isn't that the motion we just defeated, to amend the policy?
Just for the curling club.
I think that's what I voted on.
Just for the curling club. What Councillor Salter is talking about is another motion that would include
the curling club,
as well as others, I understand. So, do you want to make that motion? You already did? I didn't think you did. I heard you ask the CAO a question. You didn't make a motion.
All right, I make the motion.
All right, use your microphone and make a motion, please.
I make the motion. I make the motion that the policy, the permissive tax policy, be given to staff with the direction that they develop either an extra criteria or category, or they can have a list of extenuating circumstances at the end. I don't know. I see you looking at me, Debbie.
I think what Councillor Powell is getting at is that. Oh, wait a minute. You got a second. It's not very clear. It has to be clarified.
I wanted to hear what you were going to say, I wanted to hear what you were saying. I didn't hear it. You didn't finish.
What I was saying is that in terms, I think it should be a little more specific.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's appropriate that motions be seconded before they're discussed.
It's been seconded. Councillor Beale seconded it. She did it quickly, but she seconded the motion. She used her right hand. You couldn't see her. Okay. So specificity in terms of the motion, Mr. Manson, I think you had it a little while ago.
Yeah.
Well, that staff be directed to create a new category to include whatever criteria for 100% exemption. But the problem is that I have no idea what the criteria is.
It sounds to me what the criteria is what the criteria is now to give them 50%, because that's the only way they're going to get in. Oh? Okay, how about this then? The category, in the category of sports and entertainment or whatever, the way it reads now, given the implications for the what's the word I'm looking for the impact that it has on the organization in terms of what they do in terms of maintaining the building or maintaining the premises.
How about it just be that staff be directed to review options for creating a new category to exempt properties like and similar to the curling club from taxation or for permissive taxation for council's consideration. And then we'll sit down with Councillor Powell and anybody else who wants to give us a little bit of insight as to what you're looking for, okay, and try and throw something together for you to look at.
Okay.
Does
that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. That's moved and seconded by Councillor Beale. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. I'm going to wait a few seconds for the live screening. The next item we have, and it's going to be so straightforward. A picture's worth 1,000 words. It's unsightly property, 609 Turner Road. Mrs. Comas, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Well, Your Worship, it is an unsightly property. We've had complaints dating back to 2007. The current complaint began in 2014, and despite correspondence and contact with the owner on a variety of occasions, there has been no effort to clean up the property. As a result, staff are requesting council authority to proceed to have the property cleaned up and the cost placed on their taxes for the end of December 2015, and if they remain unpaid, then they will just carry forward.
Thank you. The mover, Councillor Greir, seconded by Councillor Salter. Any discussions on the motions, rather? Councillor Greir first.
Just a question that I'd like to ask, and somehow I'd like to see it changed. I don't understand why we have to, everything that goes through the bylaw enforcing department has to go through council. We have to make the decision. I think they're paid enough money and they should have the authority to make the decision themselves rather than go through council on every situation. Are they not paid and authorized to do a job and give the people a warning, then give them a ticket?
In actual fact, the bylaw enforcement officers do issue many, many tickets for many different types of infractions. However, the community charter requires that there are certain infractions which must be considered by council. And so when it's going to the point where we are going to enter onto property and conduct a cleanup, and then if that cleanup is unpaid for by the property owner, that it's going to go on their taxes, there must be a council resolution to provide staff with that authority.
Yep. Thank you.
Any further comments, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. directed to Ms. Comas. Do we know, this has been an ongoing unsightly property, but has it been the same property owner or resident in the property? Is the property owner residing at the property?
No,
So
it's
this
an
is a
absentee.
tenancy
That's correct. But the responsibility rests
is
with
still
the
with the property owner. I understand.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We now move on to new business, and if council will indulge me for a few moments, I've got a number of items that I'd like to cover before going around the table. First of all, I'd like to thank the Knox United Church for hosting the May 28th ERWS Town Hall meeting. This was done at no charge, and I want to thank all those who attended for their questions and for their input. The next thing I wanted to mention was also the meeting we had with the property owners this past Saturday. I want to thank Councillor Salter, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Beale, and Councillor Powell for coming. I thought it was a very positive, lots of good constructive criticism, and we'll be going to deal with that in the very near future. The first thing I'd like to do tonight is with Ms. Bottomley sitting in the audience, is to get some idea from council. We talked about doing a walkabout. I'm going to say wheel walkabout, but we talked about doing a walkabout downtown. And could we receive some dates? You're talking about the middle end of June, roughly, to do that. It would start about 4:30 to give those at work a chance to get here, or to get here a little bit late. Okay, I'm going to ask members of council to email me dates in June, anytime after the 9th of June, as to when you'd be available for that kind of. Give me a series of dates, and we'll sit down with the PDBA and get that organized. Is that okay? Okay. You have a question on that?
So could we not do it on a weekend, so it's not?
Could we do it on a Saturday? Yeah, but 4:30. Yes, CAO.
If I may, Your Worship, that's something that we can do at the staff level, is to pick a number of dates, send out an email to council, find out whether or not you're available, whether or not the PDPA is available.
So if somebody arrived at 5 o'clock, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem if we started at 4:30, or would it? Thank you. And thank you for being a solitary figure in the audience tonight. You're all alone. Council members, I won't ask for specific responses tonight, but I want you to go away from the meeting. I've received from the Nanaimo Chamber Orchestra 2 tickets for the Nanaimo Chamber Orchestra concert to be held at St. Edmund's Anglican Church on June the 7th, 2015 at 2:30 p.m. So if anybody wants these 2 tickets, first come, first serve. I'll leave them with Mrs. Weeks at the office. I wanted to remind everybody that on June the 6th, Level 3 water conservation comes into effect, and I hope that everybody in town will take that very, very seriously. The other thing I'd like to mention is that yesterday, tomorrow, and on Wednesday, we are having the Truth and Reconciliation ceremonies. Yesterday was the Walk for Reconciliation. Thousands of people, if you saw it on television, walked in solidarity with survivors of the Indian residential schools, and taking a stand for better relations between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. Tomorrow, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee commissioners will release their findings on Indian residential schools. And on June the 3rd, there will be children and youth will plant a garden of hearts at Rideau Hall in memory of the children that went missing at that residential school. And I think we all feel like having been impacted by this terrible event in our history. I just wanted to point that out to members of council. So other than that, there'll be an update on the. We'll do some updating on the meeting, the open house or the town hall meeting of Thursday night, and of course there'll be more follow-up on the Saturday afternoon meeting with the property owners downtown. Much to do and much to get organized. Any further items under new business? Councillor Greir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I heard from Kevin, the chap with the kayaks today, on 2 different phone calls, and he's pressing to get something done. And I talked to Debbie Comas today, and she told me some of the reasons it's been dragging along, I guess. Anyways, this chap is very desperate. We're at a point where we might lose him, and I think he's a big asset to the community. And the park is busy now, and he's already lost a month's salary or a month's income. So I don't know how we can hurry this along or what we can do for him, but we should do something and give him some kind of a direct answer when and if, or maybe he can't start up his business.
I spoke to him today, and I explained to him that once the staff have cleared the issue of an availability of a site, which is becoming a bit of a problem in terms of the work that's being done where the erosion was taking place, is that not only that aspect of it, but we council cannot and council will not make a direct award to one individual. You have to go for open bids. And I think he understood that, because that's just not within our purview. You can't turn around and sole source a contract in this case, because we don't have justification for it, and we'd be severely criticized by somebody else who wanted to do the same thing. So that's a problem.
So is there any chance that we can get on with it? I mean, I think he approached us, 3 weeks ago? And we haven't given him an answer of any kind. I know he was looking at the pad at the end of the beach, and I understand rightly so that Ms. Comas told me that it's going to be under construction. There'll be some heavy equipment there. I told him that as well, but he said this side of that area is an excellent place where he could set up if in chance he did. But we should give him some kind of an answer when we're going to advertise, or if we're going to advertise, or if we want him or if we don't want him, because he's got other obligations to meet.
Mrs. Comas.
Well, Your Worship, there are a variety of issues that are of concern. He wanted an RV down there overnight, which is prohibited by zoning. So first off, the equipment would have to come out every day, and that's not something he wanted to do. The second issue is, Mayor Lefebvre is correct, we will have to go out to tender. The third issue is the construction that is planned for the Arbutus Point to deal with the erosion, and we haven't got our exact dates on that yet. That's one of the things that we're waiting for before we come back to council. But it is going to be challenging this year to accommodate what it is that he would like to do in his business.
Just before I lose my train of thought, is it possible that we'll have some sort of a recommendation come the next council meeting in this month? Is that a reasonable time frame?
We can certainly work towards that.
Okay. Councillor Oates and then Councillor Salter.
When can we expect the tender to go out?
Once we have all of our parameters together and council receives the staff report and makes a decision based on the information that we have available, then we can go to tender.
Councillor Oates?
What sort of parameters do you need?
Well, first of all, there's land use parameters, what he is and isn't going to be able to do with his equipment, and what our construction dates are, because it's going to involve heavy equipment. The construction that is slated for that area involves heavy equipment, and it will be taking up a lot of space, and we won't, from a safety perspective, we won't be able to have people, the area will have to be cordoned off. We won't be able to have people coming in and out of there. So whether he's right beside the area or not really isn't going to be able to be accommodated.
To date, what has the city done to get us to a point where we can respond to Kevin? What actions has administration taken? Concrete actions have we taken from the time he was here till tonight?
As staff, we have met and discussed the matter and talked about it over the phone and by email, trying to coordinate the information, but not all of the information was available to us when he came, and we're still waiting for some of it to come in from contractors, etc. So, I mean, we understand that this is important to him, but I don't believe the council was aware of some of the things that were planned for that area at the time that he appeared before council. And so as staff, we have been discussing it and looking at how we can accommodate it, but it's not looking good.
Councillor Salter.
Well, my thought, actually, I was going to ask the same question, how long would it take for us to get something? So if we're thinking it's not going to look good, would it make sense for us to just go there right now? I mean, we could look at possibly putting something out for tender for next year and being prepared for it. I don't think we're prepared for it this year, and it doesn't look like we're going to be. This is June now, and this fellow does this for a living. Could we at least let him know, look, that this isn't looking good. You may want to, it's your business. You may want to go elsewhere and conduct your business and see if you could apply next year when we put it out to tender, when we're prepared.
CEO.
If I may, Your Worship, the commercial use of the point has been something that Council has advertised in years gone by. A number of people have set up operations there and have tried to make a go of some sort of rental service. The most recent one was the sea kayak lady 2 or 3 years back. As a result of the continuous, I'm going to say, failure or unprofitableness of these activities, Council eventually came to the conclusion that they would no longer advertise for commercial use at the point, which is where we were. 11th hour, 59th minute, Kevin comes in and says, I'm kicked out of where I am. I want to go out there. So we've been scrambling ever since. It isn't something that we looked at to start with, and actually Council's direction was we are not doing it. At the staff level, we've consistently told them no. This would have to be something that would come through Council. He has consistently said, I'm not accepting no. So that's pretty much where we're at. There are a number of criteria, circumstances, issues that have to be worked through to make this available again for a public request for proposal, tender, offering, whatever. But it is something that's come along the 11th hour and 59th minute. And as I said, up to Kevin approaching us, Council's direction was that there would be no commercial activities there. So that's kind of gives you some of the history as to where we're at, and how we're trying to move forward.
If I'm not mistaken, too, the whole issue of liability is hanging over our heads there too, is it not? In terms of what the proponent provides and what we provide.
There would be liability, or any offering that was out there, they would have to have their own liability insurance. The city would have to be a named insured under that insurance.
Councillor Greir.
Thank you, Your Worship. The onus seems to be on the end of at the end of the park where we're going to do the construction. He understands that. He says that, we have a half a mile of beach there. I'm sure he needs 50 feet or whatever. Anyways, if we're not going to let him do it, we should at least let him know. We should write him a letter, telephone him. Somebody should let him know what we're doing. because he's in between about 4 other places where he could go. And it's not a matter of him being not successful. He is successful, very successful. And he's got clients coming back on a regular basis. So we should let him know one way or another so that he can get on with his life.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Salter. We're not prepared. There's too much stuff going on down there. I think we just upgraded all of the other part of the beach. I don't know how that would impact having a bunch of people down there where we regrassed it and all the other things we've done. I think we should send him a letter stating that it's not going to happen this year.
My conversation with him about midday today was that I wasn't very optimistic, but I did promise to call him back. And so perhaps tomorrow morning, Mrs. Comas, I'll call him back and get some more detail from you. Yes, go ahead.
I have had a conversation with Kevin after the last council meeting, probably about, 4 or 5 days after we had started this process of looking at the park, and I intimated to him at that point in time, as a matter of fact, I think I was pretty clear at that point in time in telling him that at the very least council would have to go to tender, and that there were other things that we had to get in line before we could do that. And he wasn't very happy with that. He just said, well, I'll go talk to Mark at the end of that conversation. But I mean, I don't think this will come as a huge surprise to him.
Councillor Salter.
Well, I'm just wondering, should we make a motion? Yeah. So I would like.
I don't think we need a motion. I don't think so. I'll leave that up to the CAO. Do we need a motion?
I think to make it absolutely clear, if council made a motion that we're not prepared to offer it this summer, that would be pretty clear.
Do you want to make that motion?
I would like to make that. I would like to make a motion that regrettably, the park is in no condition at this time to support that business, and we'll be reviewing that over the year. Something like that.
Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Or something to that effect.
Further discussion on the motion. Councillor Oates.
Can I hear that motion again? Because if I'm voting and saying that park is not in any condition to support whatever, I'm going to have to vote against that no matter what it is.
No, that's not the motion. Councillor Salter.
I did say not. What I meant was in condition to support a commercial activity in the park at this time. But hey, we can reword it. Help me. How do you want me to reword it?
I think the motion was simply that to advise, the council would advise Dennis that for this particular summer, given all of the hoops you've got to jump through, we're not in a position to, in time-wise, to let him start up his business.
We can't do it because we can't get the paperwork done. Is that what we're telling them?
No, I think it's more than the paperwork. I think it's, first of all, it's the issue of the construction that's going on there, where he would go, and then you've got also the issue, we've got to go to public tender. We can't make a direct award to anybody. And public tender takes what, a week? 2 weeks? How many? Oh, okay, so.
Your Worship, we don't even have a plan of when we're going to go to public tender. We can't even tell the guy, hang off, we're going to public tender on such and such a date.
Well, that's even another reason.
So we don't so in fact the reason why we can't allow him there is we can't get the administrative I's dotted and T's crossed.
So
that is in fact the reason why he's doing it. There's no other reason, because if we could do that, we'd do it. So if we go back and we say we can't do it, if I'm him, and you're telling me you can't do it because of that, my next question is well, when can you put it out to tender? Because I want to do business in this city. I think he was pretty clear he wanted to do business in this city.
Councillor Oates, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the frustration, but he's come at a time when, as the CAO just mentioned, that we had banned any commercial activity because of the lack of success in past endeavors that didn't turn out very well. Now we've got not only the work that's going on in the area that's suffering erosion this summer, we've also got work going on in the washrooms, and staff are preoccupied with that. And we still haven't we still haven't rewritten the policy that would allow commercial endeavors in the park, plus the fact that we've got to go to public tender. So I think there's a whole. I don't think it's as simple as you've stated. With all due respect, I think it's a little more obfuscated than that.
Okay. I never meant to say that the process was simple. I certainly understand complicated processes, and I think Kevin would understand it too. All I'm simply saying is tell him what the process is. And the answer is, oh, there's so many different things, there's so many different hoops, there's the construction, there's this and that. He'd go anywhere in the park. So the construction down at one end, that point is moot. So we could put him somewhere else in the park. So how long does it take to go through proposals? Or is there an appetite to even have a proposal? Is council still supporting the last council's initiative that there'll be no commercial development down there? If that's the case, then let's just tell them that. We don't want any commercial activities down there at the beach at all. But if we're waffling back and forth here, you can't be half pregnant. We're either in or we're out.
I think that there's an appetite for commercial activity, but if you look at the fact that you've got to put out a 30-day tender call, we wouldn't be able to make an award at the earliest until the 1st of July, and by that time, he's lost too much money.
Then it's not a decision of council, it's a choice of his to not participate in the process.
Okay. Councillor Beale.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on that last comment. It also seems that we could be contacting him directly, also with a letter, to explain, to give the earliest possible date that something might be settled, and he can go from there as well. And all, honestly, I would expect that he would be looking for something sooner than that, and he can make his decision.
CEO, you had some other comments to make?
If I may, Your Worship, Councillor Oakes, I think, touched on a bit of it. I think there's some merit in Council having a discussion on what the eventual uses in that park should be. As Councillor is aware, 10 years ago there was a community park master plan done. There is money in the budget for 2016. I think it should be advanced, and we'll be discussing that a little bit later, for that community park master plan to be updated. The commercial use of the park could be part of that review. The policy, Council's policy not to have commercial use in the park mostly was because the commercial usages that tried to establish themselves didn't work. They wanted all kinds of additional advertising. They wanted lots of additional things that council wasn't prepared to give them. The availability or the ability to leave their product in the park all the time. That isn't something that's permitted under current council policy. They wanted additional signage all the way into the park, indicating to people, this is where you could go to rent my whatever. Again, this isn't something that council was prepared to have. Those discussions have to be had at a philosophical level before you make a decision of whether or not we want to do this or not. They haven't been had. To do it, again, 11th hour, 59th minute, you're rushing yourself into a position I don't think you want to be in. It is something that council can certainly look at, not only for this type of operation, but even the food trucks. Right now, the requirement is that they take their truck out every single night. That's a cost. Is that something that should be reviewed to allow them to leave them in overnight? A huge saving to them, maybe cash money to us. There's a bunch of things with that park that I think you should be looking at. There's over 200 special events in the park this year. That park is heavily used. If you allow a commercial operation such as this, it's going to take up some space as well. All of those things should be discussed. So I don't think it's a case of bureaucracy or anything. I think it's a case of this fellow has gotten himself into a pickle. His emergency, it is a problem, but I don't think it would behoove us to jump in without really thinking about it. I think there are some real deep discussions with that park, its use and its future use that should be had.
Councillor Salter.
Well, I just wanted to, just with regard to what a CAO Mason just said, Manson just said, was that he has been in the park. He's been on the Bernie Walsh property. He hasn't been in the park. He hasn't asked to be in the park. So it, as you said, it was at a very late date that we received this request. And that's where we're sitting now, at a very late date. We have work going on in the park. We have other activities going on in the park. Therein lies our problem. We don't have, we're not in a position to be able to approve this here and now for this year. That's my problem.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
I echo a lot of Councillor Salter's comments, and I fully support our staff and the procedures that are in place. We are not able to always dictate or know when services can happen, and that construction, there's so many things we do not have a crystal ball to decide what day everything aligns. And like many around the table, I do fully support a motion, and that to let this gentleman know that this is not going to occur at this time this year, so that he can move on with his business as a business person. I think that's really needed, and that I would really support some interaction with staff and sit down like a couple hours or something at some point in time, and to look at the community park master plan and to move forward on that with that.
He did make it very clear to me on the phone today that he wasn't, he does have other options, and he wasn't prepared to wait very much longer. So, and when I mentioned the fact that it'd have to be a public tender, we can't make a direct award, I think that's sort of flipped over. Yes, Councillor.
I think in a way it's a good thing that this has come before council, because the question then becomes that we need to tackle as a council is, do we support commercial activity in the park? So, I mean, if for no other reason, it's great that it came forward there. Answering the question in the affirmative for him would mean that we'd have to answer it in the question in the affirmative for all, and I'm not sure that would be a wise thing to do and be more of a knee-jerk reaction. So I think out of respect to the gentleman who's trying to run his business, we should tell him that, maybe there's not an opportunity here this year. Regrettably, we have a beach and we don't have that sort of things, but it is what it is.
Okay, so on that motion, we decided we'd make a motion. You made the motion. We have a seconder. Who seconded the motion? Councillor Powell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, anything else under new business? Councillor Powell.
I'm surprised. Thank you, Worship. There's been a couple things. I went to the Parksville Downtown Business Association meeting on Wednesday. It says that I'm the liaison, and they got they're starting their strategic planning. It's not done, but I'm sure it will be done soon. And they're working very hard with the business community and the city. I also attended the meeting on Saturday with the property owners, and it was very worthwhile. There was a lot of information that was shared by people who have redeveloped in the downtown area, and some of the things they ran up against. And this is a beginning. We're going to have another meeting, and as Mayor Lefebvre discussed, he said, we're going to do the walkabout downtown, and I think this is a beginning, and I think the city absolutely needs to be on board with this, and so we've got to figure out how we're going to do it and work with you guys to accomplish it.
Any further comments? Councillor Salter.
Just for clarification, we did talk about the the letter from Charna Macfie regarding the Ermineskin wetlands, and you said it was going to be something that we would pick up and go in camera.
In camera, yes.
And that is what we're going to be doing, is going to be going into camera? Okay, and that would be after our next.
Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Like many other councillors and yourself, I attended the Parksville and Historical Society's open, the first farmers market, not quite their first artisans market, and it was heavily attended and beautiful night, and really nice to see a lot of people out and about. This coming Saturday, I'm also the liaison for the Oceanside Accessibility group, and I don't believe you're here this weekend to attend, Mayor Lefebvre, but they are holding a fundraiser and dinner at the Legion this Saturday. And as well, I attended with the Downtown Business Association, and it was really quantity wasn't there, as we've said in the past, but quality definitely was, and I look forward to having a walk with the rest of council.
Thank you.
Oh, yes,
just for
and I'm
council's
sorry.
information, I think you already know, but Councillor Beale and myself will be attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference, and it should be very interesting. I know that lots of changes have happened in Alberta since we last were there. Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, Your Worship. Councillor Greir reminded me, as he's away and that this weekend, that I'm also opening up the ALS walk that's on Sunday. So
Very worthy
if
cause.
anyone is
Councillor Oates.
able to attend.
Just three items. Just confirmation, the council tour for the Parksville facilities, still a go for the 11th. The water meeting that we had the other night at Knox United Church, I think, it fulfilled the spirit of the motion, and I appreciated people coming forward and the comments there. I'm wondering, are we going to get a compilation of the remarks that were made, or that's something that's in the works? Okay. And on a final note, I was down in the park again on the weekend. Great to see the number of kids that are playing there in the playground and the activities and the ball fields being used. I noticed that there was 3 food trucks there. I understand, though, that I believe that there was only supposed to be 2 trucks there, and there's 3 food trucks there. I noticed that there's people parked all over the place on the grass and such down there, especially by the ball diamonds. I noticed people there consuming alcohol. And I'm thinking that maybe we need to revisit the notion of having bylaw presence at the beach on the weekends, and I think that that's something that I will be bringing forward in the near future for council's consideration. I believe the public would like to see more bylaw enforcement on the weekends, especially down at the beach, and I certainly would like to see it. On another note, that the summer, I believe there's summer students we have there working down there for the city. They do a fantastic job cleaning up the litter and that. They're a presence there, and they help. I noticed people grabbing their dogs off the beach when they seen the little tractor thing they were driving go by. So, you know, that indicates to me that a presence is enough to provide a certain amount of enforcement. So that's all I have.
Thank you. And, you know, there's no doubt about it. Our beach is becoming stressed. That's something we're going to have to deal with, as the CAO said earlier in his comments. Seeing no